come on, because nobody can get close to me. They're not even close. I'm the best fighter in the world.
Iron Mike. It's him. The most exciting heavyweight of the late 80s and the 90s. A boxer so feared on account of his speed, strength, and sheer viciousness that the fear in his opponents was palpable the moment they stepped into the ring with him. There was something clearly animalistic within the guy, something made all the more famous by his purchase of a pet tiger. And who can forget his ear-biting indignation of Evander Holyfield? The same hunger and rage that drove him to hold the record of being the youngest heavyweight boxing champion seemed to drive him towards his many controversies. It was a double-edged sword. It resulted in endless personal turmoil affecting his relationships, especially his relationships with the women in his life. His professional and business lives were not far behind either in the suffering endured. This is the tragic story of Mike Tyson, the other side of the coin that many don't know about. Rough childhood. He was born on June 30th, 1966 in Brownsville, Brooklyn, a neighborhood known for its high crime rates. Tyson's father abandoned the family when he was only 2 years old. He thus never had the chance to know him. Growing up in poverty, Tyson was exposed to violence and crime from a very young age. To top it off, he had an estranged relationship with his mother growing up, who was also deep into her nose in substance abuse. I never saw my mother happy with me and proud of me of doing something. She only knew me as being a wild kid running the streets, coming home with new clothes that she knew I didn't pay for. I never got a chance to talk to her or know about her. Professionally, it had no effect, but it's crushing emotionally and personally, he said, as reported by Bleacher Report many years later. By the age of 9, he was involved in street fights with children and their fathers daily. Yes, their fathers too. I must have had 3 or 4 street fights a day. From like age 9, I was 200 pounds at age 12. I was fighting the kid, then fighting their fathers. They were crying, went home and got their father. Then I would fight the father, he said. He's claimed to have been arrested well over 30 or even 40 times by the age of 12. He faced bullying and trouble with the law, which led to his expulsion from a regular school. As a troubled youth, Tyson was eventually sent to the Tyron School for Boys, a juvenile detention center. It was at Tyron that he met Bobby Stewart, a counselor and a former boxer, who recognized Tyson's potential and introduced him to the world of boxing. His mother passed away when he was 16. These losses and such a horrific experience growing up turned him into an angry young man. The sorrows were already overwhelming, but with Stewart's guidance, Tyson's talents flourished, and he quickly began to show promise in the ring. His raw athleticism and knockout power, combined with the anger and fury he carried, took him to the ring with great success. It wasn't long before he came under the wing of Customado, who would grow to be his father figure. In 1981, he won a Junior Olympic Championship medal against Joe Cortez, and again in 1982 against Kelton Brown. Eventually, his professional break came when he knocked out Hector Mercedes in the first round on March 6, 1985. Tough marriage and tumultuous personal life. Tyson became a celebrity almost as soon as he burst onto the professional boxing scene, and his spectacular victory over Trevor Berbick in 1986 instantly catapulted him into superstardom. From the young street hooligan destined to be forgotten, he became popular worldwide. Young children wanted to be strong and powerful like him. And of course, women wanted to be with him. That supposedly lucky woman would be Robin Givens. Tyson dated actress Robin Givens in 1987, and the couple got married at the start of next year, but annulled their marriage just a year later, after Givens initially filed for divorce claiming she feared for her safety and accused the boxer of continued violence. Their personal problems were aired in a very public, scathing interview with Barbara Walters on ABC's 2020, with Givens telling millions of viewers that Tyson had a volatile temper. Cameras continued to roll while Tyson sat silently, as Givens shared details about the dark side of their marriage on national television. Over the years, Givens detailed what seemed at times to be an utterly unhinged young man. Tyson reportedly threatened to take his own life after a minor vehicular collision in September 1988 that resulted in him slamming into a tree. The New York Daily News quoted Tyson as saying, "I'm going to go out and kill myself via UPI. I'm going to crash my car." He also reportedly told his wife, "I'll kill you and then me." Overall, physical abuse was a regular occurrence with Tyson, admitting many years later that he attacked Givens and vice versa. His admission of abuse was aired on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2009. "I've socked her before, and she socked me before as well. It was just that kind of relationship," Tyson told Oprah. It was a chance encounter with none other than Brad Pitt in 1988 that finally co-signed his marriage to the grave. As Tyson came home one day to find Givens lying in bed with Pitt, one can guess how unresolved trauma and the mental scarring from his tough childhood could have easily led to such incidents. The awareness regarding mental health issues that we have in present times proved to be a boon for Mike Tyson. as he has come to feel that he finally has the space to describe his experiences. During his 2020 interview with Tony Gonzalez, Tyson came forward to reveal his mental thought processes. "Delusional is my way of life." They went on to discuss how he was the descendant of greatness. "It has nothing to do with my parents or my family or anything. They were just a vessel, and I'm very special," Tyson said. Tyson added, "People don't believe that I hate myself. Tearing yourself down is just as motivating as bringing yourself up. I became this great guy and I tear him down and I get that power too. And that's the sickness I have." In the Sky documentary Bruno vs. Tyson, Tyson admitted that he's been in numerous mental health facilities, saying, "My mind is a torture chamber, and it's not my friend. So I have to control it in order to have any kind of stability in my life." During this time, he constantly made headlines. In separate incidents, he'd gotten into a brawl outside the ring with fighter Mitch Green, and that aforementioned incident where he crashed his car into a tree and attacked the news crew that had caught him on a morning run. We had 4 penthouse apartments, 3 mansions, 200 cars, and a lot of jewelry. His former bodyguard Rudy Gonzalez said, "People wanted to see Mike Tyson just spend $1 million in Gianni Versace." Randy Gordon, former editor-in-chief of Ring magazine, and the former chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission said that every single night instead of resting, Tyson was partying. This ultimately led to his first professional defeat at the hands of James Douglas. This was widely considered to be a shock upset loss for Mike Tyson, who had been the undisputed heavyweight champion up until that point. The rush of wealth, fame, and power had indeed gotten to his head, even after going through that nightmare marriage with Robin Givens. But just within 2 years of losing to James Douglas, the darkest period of his life would follow. Imprisonment. It was a chance encounter with a young Desiree Washington in Indianapolis that almost ended his career. The details remain sketchy to this day, with Mike Tyson furiously maintaining his innocence and insisting that the sexual encounters were consensual, but to no avail. "I didn't hurt anyone or do anything to anyone, and I love women. My mother is a woman. I respect them all," Tyson said during a press conference after his arraignment. "Desiree Washington knows what happened in the room. I know what happened, and I know I'm innocent." Rudy Gonzalez also painted the picture of an utterly scared and anxious Mike Tyson at this point. His career truly hung in the balance. Be that as it may have been, the image of a young girl victimized by the big and strong heavyweight boxer did not sway the jury. He admitted at some point, he said to Desiree Washington, "I want to fuck you." Legal analyst Mark Shaw said, "I looked over at the jury. If you want to see anger on the front of people's faces the moment after something is said, it was there." 5 words changed everything. Tyson's promoter, the infamous Don King, got him a lawyer whose argument boiled down to painting him as the worst man on earth, and that young Desiree Washington should have known better than to go to him. Needless to say, it didn't stick, and it was one of the first public indications that Don King was up to no good and tried to take advantage of him in every way possible. Tyson was convicted of rape on February 10, 1992, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He was paroled after 3. He went to prison on March 26, 1992, and appealed his conviction on a number of grounds, including the exclusion of certain witnesses and the adequacy of the jury instructions. In 1993, the Indiana Court of Appeals, 2nd District, upheld his conviction and declined to grant him a new trial. In many ways, however, it appeared as if prison was the best place for him to be in the midst of all the darkness that surrounded him. He was Mike Tyson after all, so no one in prison would bother him. Tyson used his 3 years behind bars to read and learn, said James Voiles, Tyson's defense attorney. In a 1994 jailhouse interview, he spoke about reading Homer and coming to understand Islam to become a Muslim and be proud of becoming a Muslim. On March 26, 1995, the world eagerly awaited Tyson's release. He was coming out as a completely different and thoroughly changed man, though it was initially expected that he would not be fighting again. But a highly anticipated press conference, Tyson made a definitive announcement: "I will fight again." He came back to have another highly successful run throughout the 90s, but again, his demons never fully left him, taken advantage of, and further mishaps. In 1998, he sued his promoter Don King for $100 million and alleged that he had been cheated out of millions during the course of their working relationship. The lawsuit alleged that King took advantage of Tyson's vulnerability and lack of understanding of contracts to secure unfair deals. Tyson argued that King's actions were a gross conflict of interest. After years of legal battles, Mike Tyson eventually reached a settlement with Don King. On June 26, 2004, Tyson agreed to drop his $100 million lawsuit against King in exchange for a $14 million payout. The $14 million wouldn't go towards Tyson himself, and instead was used to pay off his debts. Don King's cheating of Mike Tyson went deep and across many ventures. The Seattle Times, in a 1998 article, described King had contracts that not only made him Tyson's promoter, but also gave him 30% of his earnings. which was technically against Nevada law. What Nevada boxing officials didn't know was the checks King gave to them for both Holyfield fights weren't entirely Tyson's to keep. The $30 million paydays would be cut in half by the time Tyson wrote checks for $9 million to King and $3 million each to Home and Holloway, wrote the Seattle Times. King was selling Tyson's likeness. When the World Wrestling Federation needed Tyson's picture for its WrestleMania ads, the rights belonged to Don King Promotions. Though Tyson signed the checks for Mike Tyson Promotions, his financial records were handled in King's office by an accountant he selected, keeping Tyson out of the loop. "I think sometimes he signed blank checks," said Jeff Wald, a Hollywood agent who would become Tyson's new advisor in 1998. Mike was not told exactly what was going on. Yes, he signed checks, and yes, he spent money, but he was entitled to that money. All the while, Tyson attempted to fill the void in himself with lavish spending. Everyone will remember, or have at least heard about the infamous incident in which he bit off Evander Holyfield's ear in 1997, and it almost appeared as if the policemen who set out to restrain him were next. He was fined $3 million for biting Holyfield's ear in the ring, and it was no big deal for him to buy a Ferrari for $300,000. He allegedly declined to test drive because he already had another Ferrari of the same model. The second surge of good times had to end. His career finally had its last run of success while deep into his lawsuit against Don King. 2002 would see him lose all his heavyweight titles to Lennox Lewis, and in 2005, he would go into retirement following his defeat at the hands of Kevin McBride. But not before he allegedly had a chance encounter with Don King and his bodyguard on the road, and had an altercation involving him kicking his bodyguard in the head. As Tyson detailed the encounter recently in one of his podcasts, he also mentioned having been in possession of large amounts of cocaine and marijuana, indicating that despite the awakening he had in prison, it didn't take long for him to slip right back into his old habits. Since his retirement, he hasn't been far from controversy. A few DUI incidents and public altercations have shadowed him over the years, most recently the incident that saw him assault someone on a plane. He has since become a regular face on the internet through the success of his podcast, Venture Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson, where he's frequently opened up about his issues and emotional journey on the path to becoming a better person. It's important to note that in 2023, an unnamed woman filed a $5 million lawsuit against Tyson, accusing him of raping her in his limousine in the early 90s. The woman claims to have experienced guilt, loss of self-esteem, shame, embarrassment, sadness, anger, depression, anxiety, violent tendencies, drug and alcohol addiction, and confusion, as well as inability to maintain and/or develop healthy relationships with men or other people in general. The gravity of the accusation warrants serious attention, even if it's yet to be proven. The incident allegedly having taken place in the 90s lends weight in the eyes of many. One can only imagine how it must feel for Tyson, looking back at what he really was doing all those years. While this claim is unproven at the time of writing, it must be said that Tyson's lifelong battle with his demons remains a heartbreaking tale and a warning in what trauma can do to a person. It, however, is also a heartwarming one, as despite experiencing some serious lows, he remains unequaled today as one of boxing's most enduring legends. Did you know about this story? Is there anything important that we've left out? Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe. We'll see you again when the dust settles on the canvas.